Hi, welcome to the Divorce Project. My name is Barry Fisher. I'm a family law attorney in Beverly Hills, and we have a fabulous show for you today. The show today is about how do parents make correct decisions for their family when they're going through this intense divorce process. And we're going to try to give you insights into that so that if you happen to be in the process or about to get into the process, we're going to give you some great suggestions. Today I have a great guest, Thomas Caruso, a marriage family therapist in Redondo Beach in Beverly Hills. He's been doing it for about 13 years. He does a lot of good therapy, and he's going to have a lot of insight into how to help you when you're going through this process. And of course, we have Jody Isaac, who's going to be our moderator and ask us questions and try to guide us through the process. So let's begin.
Barry, let's start with you. How and what can an attorney do to assist in a client's state of mind during a divorce proceeding?
Okay, well, one of the most common things that I see is when the client comes into you, the client is in a crisis, in the most difficult, conflicted time in their life. They've been married for a certain number of years. I see people that are married 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, but it's a breakup of a relationship. And every time you break up a relationship, there is pain, there is anger, there is feeling of betrayal, there is fear. Now they have kids, they have property, finances, maybe the husband works, maybe the wife doesn't. How is the wife going to survive? How are my kids going to be affected? There's so much uncertainty. So when the client comes in, the first thing I try to help the client with is becoming calm. I'm a very calm person. I try to transfer that to my clients, to give them the insight that they actually have a choice about how they act and how they feel, that they don't have to react to everything that the other side says. So counseling them and helping them to adjust to the process, to reassure them that everything is going to be okay. And as we go through this process, at the end of the time of the process, they will have everything that they need, maybe not everything they want, but everything that they need.
Very nice. That's so true. Now, Tom, as a therapist, is there a moment in time when you're speaking to divorcing or divorced couples that you find you can engage that kindness button, if there is such a thing?
Well, I don't know if there's a moment in time, but that is the issue, is when they're in this crisis that Barry described. When people are in a crisis, they are threatened, and they go from feeling like they're in a family to being attacked. And both members of divorcing couples feel attacked. They feel that their time with their children is being threatened, their money's being threatened, where they live. And to kind of help people calm down, to get self-regulated so that they can make good decisions, because when you're all hopped up on anger and fear and betrayal, whatever is going on, you're going to make decisions based on that anxiety. And that leads to pain for them and pain for their children.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Now, Barry, what do you see as the role of counseling during divorce proceeding?
Well, as a family law attorney, we take classes in psychological counseling. Now, we're not therapists, but we do play a role in trying to help our clients calm down and deal with the situation. And then what we always do is we refer them to professionals like Mr. Caruso. And it's very important because there are different roles that people play. For instance, there's a psychologist, there's a psychiatrist, and then later we're going to talk about custody evaluators, which are psychiatrists or psychologists that evaluate the situation for the courts. So there's many roles being played and involving psychological counseling. If you see that your client is having extreme issues, it's very important to get the client into counseling very early in the case. And also the kids. You know, the children are the casualties of divorce. They didn't decide to get married. They didn't decide to get born. They didn't decide to get divorced. They have no say. Everything is at their effect. And many little kids think it's their fault. What did I do wrong that's causing this? So it's very good to get the children into therapy and then to get the whole family into therapy. Because the quicker that you can get the family back to being a family, even though they may be living in separate homes, the closer you get to resolution and restoring them to normalcy, which is, I think, the big role that therapy and a counselor can do in a case.
Absolutely. Now, Tom, I know in your therapy, you really like to address stress, anxiety, fight or flight. Talk to me a little bit about that, because I know Barry very much, he addresses that all the time when the case is in the office.
Well, what happens is families and couples divorcing, they get sucked into the drama. And this is a drama. And once you identify with being in the drama as a victim, which both members of a divorcing couple, even if one member betrayed, both people feel like they're victims. When you get sucked into the drama, you act out as a perpetrator. So the goal of therapy is to get out of the drama and do what Barry mentioned, which is to remember we're a family, we're not at war. We have kids together. We might be angry, we might be scared and hurt, but we're not at war. And getting back to that, what is the best for the family? Because what happens, unfortunately, is this punitive action that people use the kids and money and other things to hurt each other. And of course, who gets hurt the most are the children. So it's taking that drama and saying, get off it, you're not a victim here. Neither one of you is a victim. It might hurt, it sucks, but you're not a victim.
Yeah, I like
and
that.
Get out of the drama.
Here's
like
another aspect as a follow-up to what Mr. Caruso is saying. You know, people's personalities as adults are really formed when they're children. So depending on what type of parents they had, when they're an adult, they act out or be in a certain way because of how their parents were. So to one person, a betrayal or a rejection could crush them and bring them back to their childhood when they feel abandoned from their parents. Mm-hmm. And so therapy would play a role of not only getting them to cope with the divorce, but maybe to deal with some of the underlying issues that came from their childhood or traumas that they had in their life that they now can face and possibly release through therapy.
And I also find that many couples dealing with these conflicts, I use the analogy of being drunk, you know, with couples, even when they're together, is if you're having a fight and you're at a level of 8, 9, or 10 in anger, you're not going to resolve anything at that level. You have to split apart and wait till things calm down. You can't drive drunk. You can't drive your marriage drunk. You can't negotiate choices for your family drunk on mood, drunk on anger. And Barry's, Mr. Fisher's correct about these childhood things come up when we get triggered as adults. And so part of the goal is to make sure that we make decisions based on a state of mind that's more calm. Now, how do you get there? It's not as simple as saying just relax. We need tools to learn how to relax.
Absolutely. Barry, how does stress affect a client's decision-making with you in the office?
Well, it's an enormous factor. And if they're really, really stressed out, what the lawyer should do is first explain it, then put it in writing and send it to them, give them some time to process it, understand it, discuss it with them again, as long as you have the time available, because one of the things that people don't realize is that our court system is an adversarial system. That means each side tells their story. They're adversarials. It's like, court is like civilized war. So you have a judge who acts like a referee. You come into court, you each tell your story, and then the judge decides. So sometimes we have time frames where we don't have enough time to allow the people to adjust to the process. But that is the key. Getting them to adjust to the process, understand the process, be clear about what's going on. I get many calls from clients that are represented by other attorneys, and they say to me, I don't understand what's going on. Can you explain it to me? Even though they're represented by an attorney. Well, he's never available, or he doesn't return my calls. So I spend time educating people and trying to explain what the process is, which is why we're here on this show.
And that's also part of the difficulty in keeping people regulated, because as Mr. Fisher just said, it's like it's a conflict-based scenario in the courts. And I call it a left-brain rational process of divorcing. When we talk about relationship, and this is what we're talking about is relationship, whether it's through divorce and when we talk about relationship, that's a right-brain creative process. So if I'm dealing with couples, even if they're together still, I often say to people who get stuck in minutia of what's right, what's wrong, what's the right thing to do. And I always say to people, you can be right or you could be married, but you could also be right or have a healthy divorce. It's not about right or wrong. And unfortunately, the court system is going to kind of make decisions. And both people feel like the other person, that they're going to lose. And we get out of the right brain creative process of forgiveness, of trying to let go, of winning, of outcome, and trying to have that different approach. And unfortunately, it's hard to manage that while you're dealing with the court system of win-lose, left-brain, rational decision-making.
Okay, if I may follow up just for a moment. Family law attorneys have experience and they understand how this process works. The first thing to understand is that the California legislature wants children to have continuous and frequent contact with their parents. They also want both parents to be involved with the children. The California legislature has ruled that they would like all couples to share joint custody. So when you go into court, the judges are directed by the legislature to get you to agree to joint custody. And the exception to the rule is legal custody to one side. Now, what does this mean? Clients come in and say, I want full custody, he's a terrible dad, I want full custody. Well, the court doesn't see it that way. The court sees that each person is equally involved and responsible for the children. And unless they're really bad, violent, using drugs, alcoholics, the court is going to push you to a joint custody situation. So one of the things to be educated about is that if you're going into a divorce, if you go in with the state of mind that we're going to come out someplace in the middle, you'll remove the conflict from your divorce. And that is the key. Because if you come down the middle road, have an expectation that you're going to receive something in the middle, oh, you've just healed yourself. You've just brought yourself to a place of understanding and of consciousness where you can take advantage of the court system and your case can go so smooth.
Ah, that's a dream, I imagine. Tom, do you have a way that you can catch a couple in the act of not being in that place of, disengagement, let's just call it?
Well, I guess what if I observe it, which is if I observe one member of the couple saying, if I don't fight, I'm going to get screwed. And that's the problem, is both people saying, well, I would like to do that middle way, but if I don't come out with guns blazing, I'm going to get screwed over in this process. And trying to convince both people together that that's not going to work or be a good way to go. Is that do not go guns blazing, and you're better off getting, with the fear of getting screwed than to go the way Mr. Fisher just said, which is, let's look for the middle way.
Right, and when it comes to the fact that the court has to request a custody evaluation, can you explain that, Barry?
Yes, custody evaluations, a judge has a limited amount of time. In the morning he has 20, 25, 30 cases on his calendar, which he has to get to between 8:30 and 12. How much time does he have for each case? 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes? And then there are ones in the afternoon where he gives longer times and he takes evidence and has hearings. So he needs help. He can't figure out what's the best for the family. He can't figure it out. So what he does is he goes to a custody evaluator, a psychologist or a psychiatrist, an expert. He says, look, you look into this family. You interview the mother, the father, all the significant others, the kids, the school teacher. You write a report and you give me a recommendation and tell me what's best for this family. And with that recommendation, I'll have more information because they produce a 50 to 100-page report and they test them psychologically and they give the court that information. So that saves the court because the evaluator may take 3 months to do his study. So all the time that he invests is compiled into a report, and then there's recommendations. So the judge can read that, digest that, and get the benefit of his investigation. So custody evaluations are used to assist the courts. But they're very costly. They're very confrontational because they invade your privacy. Do you really want a psychologist looking into your family and forcing your children to come to interviews? It's something that is not necessarily the best course. I want to touch on something that Mr. Caruso said earlier. If there is a conflict that's justified, for instance, if somebody comes in and says, I want all the property, I want all the children, I want all the money, I want all the support. Well, you have no choice as a lawyer. You have to go into court with guns blazing and fight for your client to get what your client deserves. In most cases, during a marriage, all property that comes in to the marriage is owned 50-50. So if someone is claiming 100%, you do have to go in with guns blazing. And there are other issues, financial issues, where it's appropriate to litigate. People hiding assets, people hiding money. But in the family unit, the best thing is to do is to settle.
Absolutely. I would really like to move to this perfect place where there is forgiveness and there is healing and
acceptance.
Tom, please speak to that place, please, and what it takes to get there.
Well, forgiveness is not for the weak. Forgiveness, as Gandhi said, is for people with great strength. And I think it's like cooking something. You can only do it when you're there. And very rarely when you're in the process of a separation and divorce is it possible, but unless you're a truly amazing person. I know for me, I was divorced 9 years ago. I like to say I was spousally terminated. And there's a lot of hurt, rejection, fear, all those things that we're talking about I went through. And in California, as Mr. Fisher said, 50-50 custody. We made a deal without going to court. It was all very nice. But I know that for me, making acceptance and forgiveness of the situation was hard to do, even with 50-50. Because for many parents, I don't want to be a half-time dad. I want to be a full-time dad. I don't want to have to move out of my house and find another place to live. It's a hard transition. So helping people through managing their hurt, rejection, betrayal to begin with is stage one. You're not going to get there fast. Right. Unless it's one of those rare mutual, I think we should split apart type of divorces. But over time, it's something that I think is so worthwhile to have your eye on, which is forgiveness. And then I remember that one time, maybe 6 months, a year after my divorce, which is holding on to, I don't want to be a half-time dad, and saying, my plan was not to be a half-time dad, make a new plan, and finding peace. And the parable, I'm sure many people have heard that parable about in the Chinese village. Isn't it wonderful? The boy got a horse for his birthday, and the old man in the village says, we'll see. And wasn't it terrible? The boy fell off his horse and broke his leg in 5 places. And the old man says, we'll see. And then it says, isn't it great? The soldiers came to take all the young men in the village away, and the boy couldn't go because his leg was broken. And it's like we always attach good or bad. Isn't it terrible I'm getting divorced? We don't know, good or bad. We just have to go with what's going on with our life in the best way possible. I went through a situation a couple years ago, because after years of being a 50-50 dad, my ex-wife, who was miserable in California and wanted to go back to her home in New York, said, I'm going home. And now I could have fought it in the courts, or done what I thought was best for my family, which is not to create that turmoil, because my children were also concerned about their mother. Right or wrong, that was her feeling. So I let it go. And I would say that was the most difficult and best decision I've ever made. Ended up being very good for my daughter. My son has come back now. It's in flux. Sometimes not fighting for our rights is the best thing to do. I'm not saying being passive, but exploring these situations is worthwhile, and saying what's the right thing to do. Not what's my right, what's the legal thing, can I win, lose, but what's the right thing in this situation.
Imagine this. You're married, you have 2 kids, you get up in the morning, you see your kids. They go to school. You come home from work, you see your kids. You see them every day. On the weekend, you go to the movies with them, you see them every day. 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You file for divorce, and all of a sudden, you're not seeing your kids every day. You're seeing them every other day, or maybe once a week, or every other weekend. this is really hard to adjust to. But the process of divorce is very interesting because just like in a relationship, we're in love. Everything's wonderful. We broke up. Oh, I hate that person. Now we're going to go through this process. Oh, I feel rejected. Oh, I feel abandoned. Oh, I have fear. Time goes on. So in the beginning, there's a lot of anger, a lot of fear, and a lot of uncertainty. You go to court, you get the first set of orders. It says, okay, you have the kids 1 week, I have the kids next week. That goes on for a while. You calm down, you adjust to it, you start to feel more normal. Now there's less anger, there's less stress. And now as you go on, you complete the divorce, you have a final judgment, you're done. And now it's 3 years later. What happens 3 years later? Oh, you want the kids for an extra weekend? Go ahead. Would have you ever agreed to that at the beginning of the divorce? Never. But 3 years post-divorce, you're like back to normal. It's okay. Because you've forgiven the other person. You've forgiven yourself. You've adjusted to it. You've let go of the anger and the fear and the uncertainty. So it's hard to have a crystal ball. But a professional like myself, an attorney, a family law attorney, or Mr. Caruso, can help guide the individuals that are involved in divorce so that they could go through this process and do it in a conscious way. They could have a better result. And you know what? They could save money because conflict, you pay a lot of money to the attorneys and to the professionals, and you can avoid that.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Tom, had you at any point in time thought to rush to court, to enforce, to defend your position? Yeah. Did that occur?
I went back and forth, and I was advised by many people. I would say the majority of people in my life, in my personal situation, said, no, you got to fight for your rights. And I think that's what most people are encouraged. And I think, like I said, you can be right, or you can try to feel your way what's the best right thing to do. And that there are times to fight. There are times to say, no, this is a violation and this isn't okay, not just for me, but for my children. But that's where it takes some wisdom.
Right.
That's where it takes some deep reflection. And again, when I talk about forgiveness, it's not just about strength. If I forgive, it's not for the other person I'm forgiving. It's for me. It's for me for letting go. Mm-hmm. That's a gift I give myself if I can forgive anybody.
Absolutely.
And by the way, I can assure you, every couple divorcing, even though many people feel like the wronged party, both people feel wronged somewhere along the line. It's not like, I mean, there are cases where there's truly the injured party, but in most cases, there's enough hurt to go around, mm-hmm. and enough need for forgiveness to go around.
Absolutely. Barry, do you ever find yourself catching your client in a place where they could avoid that extra drama in court, that extra ex parte emergency, run to court with your issues? How do you
I see that every single day, because the clients come in, and remember, in the beginning, it's like life or death. I can't be separated from my child. Look what that person's doing. I have to act. But the courts have designed a stop system. You can't go in on short notice, ex parte, 24 hours, unless your child is in risk of being kidnapped or is in risk of imminent harm. Otherwise, the judge is going to deny your application and just set it for hearing 30 or 45 days later. So the courts have tried, they realize that there's this emotional thing that comes up, but I advise clients every day how to go about things so that they can save money and they can have a better life and they can get the result that they want, but they have to do it in an organized way, guided by the attorney. They shouldn't go off on a tangent and fight.
Very nice. Wow. Any closing words?
Well, I want to thank KBEV Studios. And by the way, this program is produced and directed by students of Beverly Hills High School. And it's wonderful that they allow us to come in here and do this work and share our information with the community. They do a wonderful job, and we want to thank them. And the director, Romeo, is amazing. And we want to thank you for coming. And please tune in next week. We're going to have a weekly show We're going to put on a program and have different guests each week. I want to thank Mr. Caruso for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
And for Jody being here as a moderator. And we appreciate very much you being here. Thank you again, and see you next week at the Divorce Project.